So, this isn't the end, is it? No, Oliver. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. Masked Destiny. Sean. Graymore Mansion. February 1998. It would take a lifetime to look through all these books, said Marshall, pulling another one from the shelf and holding it under the hanging lamp for a better view. Marshall and I were in the library, exploring the dusty, leather-bound tomes. Thousands of them. That's typical of Graymore, I said. I've lived here nearly a year, and I haven't even been in all the rooms yet. There's always something new to explore. Something old, don't you mean? Said Marshall, grinning. Rain mixed with sleet pelted the window panes. I stared out the window, but nothing met my gaze, except for my own distorted reflection in the glass. It didn't matter. My eyes were all but unseeing. What's wrong? Asked Marshall, looking up from his book. I turned. I was thinking about Marty. It was on a night like this that he disappeared. Marshall closed the book and returned it to the shelf. I know you miss him. I can't pretend to understand. I don't know how I'd feel if my best friend was murdered. Upset, yeah, but it's one of those things you have to experience to understand. Pray to God you never understand, then. It's been months, but I keep expecting to run into him in the halls at school, or to pick up the phone and hear his voice. Then I remember, and it all comes back to me. I'm sorry. I looked into Marshall's dark eyes and smiled grimly. Time heals all wounds, right? That's what they say. I turned back to my reflection in the window. He died too young. He's in a better place. Do we know that for sure? There's a way to check. Perhaps enough time has passed now. Perhaps. No, Marshall. It's not worth the risk. Then ask Taylor the next time he appears, or Mark. I don't know. Sometimes all this just too much. Is living in Spook Central getting on your nerves? I love Graymore, but so much has happened. Sometimes I can't even believe it myself. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than dreamt of in your philosophy. Don't I know it? I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. It's cold in here. I wish I could have saved him. If only I could go back and do things over. Do things right. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, said Marshall. But fairly useless, all things considered. Oh, I don't know. There's much more to be learned from the past. Sean? Sorry, I said, wiping my eyes. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I couldn't help myself. Are you still thinking of Marty? Yes, of Marty, the friend I lost and I'll never see again. Of the others, of Taylor and Mark. You've read their journals. You know what it was like for them. Yeah. God, I wish I could turn back time and save them. I'd save them all. I stood in silence, looking at my own reflection in the window, until I became aware of the absolute silence in the room. How long had I been standing there? Seconds? Minutes? Hours? I turned. Marshall. Marshall? A distant look had come over Marshall's face. He stood gazing off into space. A chill traveled up my spine. Yes, he said quietly, but I had the distinct impression he was not speaking to me. I watched Marshall as he rolled the ladder down the shelves on the west side of the room. He climbed nearly to the top and pulled down a thick, heavy tome. I noticed a glint of gold and a flash of red as the light reflected off it. The cover had a large, flat, rectangular jewel that looked like a ruby set into gold. Marshall climbed down, blew away the dust of a century, and placed the book on a large, marble-topped table in the center of the room, right under the old-fashioned gas chandelier that had recently been converted to electricity. A gust of wind shot through the room, though the windows and doors were fast shut. The book blew open, and Marshall put his finger to a page. Yes. Marshall? I don't like this. Marshall began speaking, chanting in a language unfamiliar to me, yet familiar in a way. It wasn't quite English, yet I could almost understand part of it. I caught bits and pieces. Per se, swish, strange, strands, time and space. Time and space? Marshall, what are you doing? Stop! Marshall, stop! A vortex formed around Marshall, a whirling cyclone of wind and debris, yet he and the table were untouched by it. I was not so lucky. I leaned hard into the wind, fighting to remain standing, fighting to make my way to Marshall. I could hear his voice above the wind, chanting. The howling wind became deafening. Then, silence. Blackness. I could see nothing. It was as if I'd gone blind. I could hear nothing, save for my own ragged breath. Marshall! Marshall!